This is a men's shirt making video. Part 2. Sleeve plackets and armholes. This video covers the construction of the sleeve plackets and attaching the sleeves to the armholes. First, mark the sleeve placket position on the right side of the sleeve. Then mark the stitching lines on the wrong side. You can pre-fold both the top and bottom placket pieces before stitching. Press the centre fold line and the seam allowance on the other side of each piece. Now, align the placket pieces with the marked position on the wrong side of the sleeve. Stitch both the top and bottom placket pieces. Ensure you backstitch at the top ends. It is critical that the two stitch lines are perfectly parallel and of equal length to ensure the top is neatly level. Next, cut precisely in the middle of the two stitch lines, stopping 1 cm below the stitch ends. Cut into each of the stitch end points to complete a Y-shaped cut. Try to cut as close to the stitch ends as possible without cutting any threads. Now move to the ironing board. Place the sleeve right side up. Pull out the small bottom placket and fold the seam allowance towards the placket side. Fold along the pre-pressed line to cover the seam allowance. This folded edge should extend 0.5 cm beyond the stitch line. Press to secure its position. Next, pull out the top placket and fold its seam allowance towards the placket side. Again, the folded placket edge should be placed 0.5 cm beyond the stitch line. The small triangular shape between the two stitch ends should be folded upwards at this stage. Now, edge stitch the bottom placket. Then, edge stitch the top placket along the top triangular shape and stitch across the placket to complete it. This crossing stitch should be placed 0.1 cm above the first two parallel stitch ends to secure the folded triangle. Before attaching the sleeves, correctly match the right and left armholes to the sleeves. The placket should be positioned on the back side of the sleeve. Also, check that the balance notches are aligned. Place the shirt body on top of the sleeve, with right sides facing. Misplace the seam allowance by 1 cm. This technique is used for a run and fell seam. The sleeve's seam allowance will be 1.5 cm, while the body's is 0.5 cm. Ensure the front and back balance notches are matched, as is the top notch. The sleeve head should include an amount of ease. Spread this ease evenly between the front and back balance notches. Fold the sleeve's seam allowance over 0.5 cm towards the body's seam allowance. The folded amount can be slightly larger if you are aiming for a slimmer top stitch, but avoid covering the first stitch line to prevent a bulky finish. Open the seam and fold it down towards the body to conceal the body's seam allowance. Stitch along this folded edge to complete the run and fell seam. This can be done from the wrong side if handling the seam allowance is challenging, though stitching from the right side will provide a cleaner finish. Try to control the ease within the seam allowance as you stitch. Press the finished seam. At this stage, it is recommended to pre-press the shoulder line and the top sleeve line before closing the side seams. Repeat this entire process for the other sleeve. This completes part 2. The video will continue with part 3.